I'm Roderick, and I am a gay male living in New York City. I grew up in a small town right outside of Seattle during the era of grunge rock and gangster rap. So my adolescence was quite colorful. I realized I was gay probably since I could remember. The first true crush I had was in second grade, where the concept of having a cute little boyfriend or girlfriend with kids that age was started floating around, and I knew I wanted this particular boy to be my boyfriend. So I knew I was different when the word faggot was thrown around just at school and sometimes in my own home. And I already, just through those interactions, I knew that whatever feelings I had to suppress. And the amount of anxiety that I had too, if I were called that, or even just heard other people being called that, just put a knot in my stomach, and it was terrifying. So a lot of my teen years was me being scared and me keeping to myself. So the easiest thing to do to kind of keep myself busy, I think, was just to hit the books. So I grew up in a very, very Catholic family. My dad was in the military. He was pretty strict. We had a very strict upbringing. We had rules, we had chores, and every once in a while I would get the feeling from my dad that being gay or being a certain way or effeminate was not acceptable. So I would have those moments where I was terrified, and I was conditioned to think that what I was really inside was not going to fly. So in high school, where I grew up, there was a big Filipino community, and the one thing that you could get by was if you did really well in school, the expectation and for you to be a ladies' man was kind of excused. So that was great. I could always give the excuse that I was, focusing on my studies and I don't have enough time for a girlfriend because I was too busy getting good grades, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't until freshman year in college that I ended up, through circumstance, just hanging out with a girl and presumptively became boyfriend, girlfriend. And which is great. There wasn't a lot of pressure between her and I to really get physical. So again, worked out for me. When I finally decided to come out, it was to two people, a guy and a girl, who I befriended freshman year, and we ended up having all these classes together. And they were like family to me, and they were a safe spot where we could be goofy, we could be ourselves. And I came out to the two of them first. It was more of a question of me, like, I think I'm gay, and they were like, okay, do you want to talk about it? And I was like, sure. So we talked about it, and they were like, we don't care, we still love you. Coming out was a little bit interesting. It happened, I want to say, a year after I had come out to my two friends. At the time, my brother was 21, so I was using his ID to get into all of these clubs and stuff. And all my other friends had fake IDs also. I went to a gay club because my friends wanted to take me to one, so we went to a gay club. And at the gay club, there were a whole bunch of, Filipino gay guys that were coming up to me and asking me, like, you look really familiar, are you so-and-so's brother? And I'd be like, yeah, I am. But for me, I didn't feel weird about it, or like I feel like I was caught because, everybody there I was with was straight, so it could be assumed or it could not be assumed, so I felt like that was, for me, I could handle it. And it wasn't until, I want to say a few months later, me and my family were together, and my brother had called out the fact that, like, his gay friends have seen me at clubs, and my parents were like, no, we don't really want to talk about it, don't say things like that, and that, that was a terrifying moment for me. I was depressed because, I couldn't be honest with my family, meaning I wasn't completely honest with myself. I had started making some gay friends around school, and through friends of friends. And one of them had invited me out to California for a long weekend. So me telling my parents, yeah, I'm going to California with this guy that they've never met or don't know, was probably like a big signal to them, a big flag. So when my mom picked me up from the airport, she was asking me a lot of questions that she normally, the type of probing questions that she normally would never really ask me. Like, you know, how do you know this guy, and what did you do, and where did you go, and why did you go, and like, who is this, like, you know, all these things. Like, she was asking me questions about this guy, and I was like, he's a friend, why? And, you know, didn't think anything of it until we got home. I remember, like, I had to go meet up with a girlfriend of mine to go see a movie, and my mom was like, cancel the movie, I really want to talk to you about something. Like, when your mom or your dad asks you a question in a tone that you know is loaded and heavy with I don't want to say grief, but just it's pretty somber. And I remember my heart falling into my stomach because I knew what she was going to ask, and I just said, no, I don't want to talk. And she's like, but I think we need to. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk. She's like, well, I want to ask you something. And I said, the answer is yes. And I remember when I said that, it was like an admission of me. I might as well have just like done the rainbow flag and like, you know, and been like, I'm queer, yeah. And I just remember seeing her face, and it was a little bit of like relief, disappointment, and fear. And I knew that the disappointment was that I didn't tell her before, and the fear was, you know, what's going to happen to him from other people. But the relief was he's finally honest. And but me being on this end, it was hard for me to reconcile all of those feelings, because like I felt like I was hurting her, even though I wasn't. That's hard. Yeah, and that's probably like a reason why I didn't do it earlier, is because, you know, I had this fear of hurting them, and it's a natural fear to have. Like, you know, you stay in the closet because you don't want to, you know, you don't want to disappoint, you don't want to upset, and I think that fear is what keeps people in the closet. So me, after basically coming out and saying, yes, I'm gay, I just remember my mom sitting there kind of staring at the floor, and she said, you know, like, how long have you known? And I was like, oh God, since forever. Like how long have you known? And I just remember her, she kind of like let out this laugh, like, she was like, I mean, I'm your mom. I've known forever. And I was like, great. So I was like, all right, well, I gotta go to the movies. And she's like, all right, have a good time. I didn't have a really close relationship with my dad. The relationship was mostly just built out of like respect and a little bit of fear. I was sure that I was going to get cut off, and I was, you know, going to be on my own. So I said, well, what about Dad? And my mom's like, just kind of looked up and like brushed it off, like, don't worry about him. I want to say a couple weeks later, a couple months later, I forget, like it was like the end of summer, so it was a couple months. I was talking about this boy that I met, and to my mom, and my mom was like, oh, invite him over for Thanksgiving. I was like, okay, great. I don't know how that's going to go, because you know, I haven't officially come out or spoken to the rest of my family as far as like aunts, uncles, and cousins about me being gay. I'm sure my mom had told everyone, like, oh yeah, Roderick came out to me. But you know, it was this sort of like, holy fuck, I'm going to be coming out like with a boyfriend at a family gathering. And so a couple weeks later, I remember I was home. This was right before like Thanksgiving, and I was helping my dad out in the garden, and you know, we were keeping the conversation as we usually do to very topical, superficial things like how's school, you know, are you paying utility bills on time, blah blah blah. And then just kind of out of like left field, he said, so I hear you're bringing someone over. And for me, I was like, okay, this could go either two ways. Either he's going to say that's unacceptable, or I don't know. And I said, yeah. Mom said it was okay. And I just remember him saying, without even looking at me, he was just saying, I don't care who you bring over, just make sure he treats you well. And I should have like broken down and cried right there and hugged him or whatever, but it was like it was the weirdest reaction. Like, I was not expecting him to be so, soft. And it's harder for parents to be soft than it is for them to be hard. Remember that. And from then on, my life changed. I brought my boyfriend home. He was a hit. He loved all the food that my family, he was Caucasian, so he had his first full Filipino holiday experience where literally there's 80 people in my house, and he's like, who are all these people? And I'm like, I don't know half of them. I don't even know this kid that's sitting down on my lap right now, but I think he's related. And he just loved it. I think that's when my family opened up about there is another world out there that we don't understand, and it starts with us accepting our son for who he is. So I have to say that's when my life really began. I was kind of acting out right before I came out. My grades were slipping, I was partying quite a bit, and it wasn't good for me. But a lot of it had to do with me being suppressed and me being in the closet. The moment I came out of the closet, my attitude completely changed. My parents were like, oh my God, we have you back. You are that kid that, was always outgoing and smiling and, trying to charm the pants off everybody. And they were like, well, your grades aren't doing so well, what is it? And I was like, look, I'm not happy being a doctor, or the idea of being a doctor. I don't like the idea of being around sick people. I'm not sure if I'm that guy. And my parents were like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do something creative, like art. And so my parents were like, okay. Freaked them out, them being Filipino parents who just shelled out all this money for my tuition and stuff like that. My older brother became this brilliant engineer, and now I'm the middle child who comes out of the closet and says I want to be an artist. You say that to two Filipino parents who are first generation, who came from poverty, from a third world country, to bringing themselves to the middle class in Seattle. Yeah, it probably gave him a heart attack, but they knew that, I think they realized me being happy, me being true to myself ultimately is what they wanted, because they wanted me to be honest. I'm now a fashion designer at a major company here in New York City, and only because my parents accepted me for who I am and also broadened their expectation of what it means to be happy and what it means to follow your dreams. So, yeah. Am I missing something?